Welcome to Unit 8 of COM 100. I'm excited to have you join me for this unit. And while the main focus of this unit is small group communication, we're also going to be intertwining relationships and conflict. And you're going to be exploring these two different elements of small group and conflict through some various activities. So let's dive into it. One of the first things I always ask my students in class is, how do you feel about working in groups? And the first thing that comes to people's mind is typically having to work in groups within an academic setting. And most people don't have a great experience. Either A, they're the person who's done all the work for the group, or B, they've been in groups that have had mad conflict together. So whenever you're thinking of small group communication, I want you to think outside that box. Where are you a member of different parts of teams? So you might even think of your family unit as a small group, and that would be an example of a primary group. Primary groups are groups that stay together for a long period of time. So even though you might not get along well with your family, they're still your family. Or maybe you have a really tight-knit family and you're doing all the holidays together, you're frequently getting together, and you have great bonds. So think of family as a small group. But there's other ways that you might be part of a small group, whether you're part of a sports team, or maybe a club or an organization, or even going to work and you having different individuals that you're working with. You can think of all of those as small group communication. So there's lots of benefits that you might consider with small group communication. First and foremost, it's going to enhance your college performance, it's going to enhance your career success, and it's going to enhance your personal life. And you might be thinking, why does that happen? Well, you collaborating with other people means that you're learning their communication style and understanding how different people work together, and you're negotiating and having to make compromises for the success of the team. So think of all those different elements whenever you are doing a small group project, whether it's with your family, coworkers at a job, or even with a sports team. So next, I want you to think about some of the advantages and disadvantages. One of the advantages of small group communication is social facilitation. And a great way of thinking about that is if you were to go to the gym or the library. Whenever you go to the gym and there's other people around you that are working out really hard, you might tend to work out just as hard. Or you find yourself at the library and you're studying, and you recognize all the people around you are studying as well. So that's what social facilitation is recognizing the environment that you're in and utilizing that energy and that momentum to enhance your skills. And that's definitely something that happens with small group communication. In addition to that, you have critical thinking that can be a huge benefit. Lots of different minds and lots of different ideas. However, there is always a holdup with that, is that you could have people that are dominating or people who withdraw within a small group setting. So in order to enhance critical thinking, have people brainstorm on their own first and then bring their ideas to the table. So let's talk about some of the disadvantages. Small group communication can be time consuming. I give a project to my students that could take 5 minutes or an hour. And basically, it's one of those scenarios where you have to kick people off of a boat and only end up with a certain number. For some classes, this is easily done within 10 to 15 minutes, but I have had classes that have spent an hour and 15 minutes engaging in this discussion. So that's a great example of how small group communication can be time consuming. But also, we can make unwise decisions. And this is because of what I've already talked about before. We have people who have dominating personalities and people who withdraw. So think about yourself whenever you're in a classroom. Are you the person who raises their hand and shares their ideas? Or are you the person who might sit in the back row and be very quiet? These are all elements of small group communication. So I want you to think that next time that you are in a traditional classroom, that's small group communication at its finest. It's a secondary group, a group that is going to end. So you have a beginning, a middle, and an end. So think about all the different groups that you are a part of and what roles do you play within those groups? All right, folks, so it's time to have some fun. In this unit, you are going to be doing 2 different small group activities. And as I mentioned, the first one is going to be dealing with conflict. So this aligns with chapter 6 of our textbook. And I want you to consider, how do you negotiate different conflicts? So you're going to need to find a person, and it doesn't have to be in the class, but a person who you can work through these conflicts with. So the first one is going to be dealing with a family scenario. The second one is going to be dealing with a business negotiation. And the third one is going to be a high stress conflict. As you're approaching these different conflicts, take time to read the full scenario and then engage with that person. Spend about 10 to 15 minutes trying to come to some type of resolution. And consider, how do you approach conflict? Are you someone who's more timid, or are you someone who's a little bit more aggressive and tries to get what they want? So I'm excited to see how you come up with different types of solutions for these different scenarios. Second, for small group activity 2, you are going to be organizing a game. And I know that all of us are in different situations, so maybe this is finding individuals that you can coordinate with online. However, you want to be playing this game for 15 to 20 minutes or even longer. But the goal of this one is to take you through the stages of small group communication. So the different stages are forming, storming, norming, performing, and adjourning. And you can even think of this as an analogy for like how classes on the campus might even function. So on day one, you form together, you all get in the same classroom. And then you're starting to figure out like, how does this class exactly function? And that's what the storming stage is all about. And then you pick up on like the cues and you are working toward a common goal. That's what norming is. And then finally, you have some type of performance. So you are performing, whether it's a test, whether it's a project, whether it's a final for a course, you hit that performing element and then you adjourn. So you go your separate ways. And typically with small group communication and secondary groups, these groups don't come back together ever again. So imagine a class that you have up on campus. After the class is over, are you ever going to get all those people in the same room again? Probably not. So your classes definitely go through all the stages of small group communication. And that's your goal with this game, is to take yourself through this process of forming, storming, norming, performing, and then adjourning. So as you're going through this unit, there might be some things that interest you. And definitely, communication theory is something that interests me, and let's talk about it. So the first theory I want to talk about with you is uncertainty reduction theory. So this theory is looking at whenever you enter into a new relationship or you're just meeting someone for the first time, your biggest goal is to reduce your uncertainty about these individuals. And this theory looks at two different things, cognitive and behavior. So you as an individual are trying to figure out, hey, what is this person thinking? But second, behaviorally, you want to be able to predict their behaviors. So think back to like the media. Like we know that we enjoy predictability. You are asking questions and trying to get information to be able to predict how this person is going to react. So be thinking about that whenever you're engaging in conflict and who you've decided to work with. Are you engaging in uncertainty reduction theory? Trying to figure out, hey, what is this person thinking? But also, why would they behave the way that they would behave? The second theory that might interest you is that of social penetration theory. And social penetration theory is often akin to the analogy of an onion and peeling back different layers. And what this theory looks at is self-disclosure and how we can move relationships from a surface level to a more intimate level. So there are different attributes to this theory of saying, hey, the more we self-disclose, the more we're going to be able to peel back those layers of an onion to get to the core of who that individual is. So make sure that you check out this theory because it's really interesting to consider, hey, how do we take a relationship from this very surface level and then get to people's core values and the more intimate details of this relationship? The next theory that you might want to consider is social exchange theory. So this theory articulates that people might be looking at their relationships in a very rational manner. And what they mean by that is putting it into like a simple math equation, is that you have benefits within a relationship and then you have costs. And then that all equals out to the value of the relationship. So benefits minus the costs equal the value of the relationship. And you can think of these benefits in numerous different ways. Like, what is someone bringing to this friendship, or what is someone bringing to this relationship? And then costs. Is it hard to communicate with this individual? Is this person not showing up for you? And then that all equals out to the value that you give this relationship. So if the costs are greater than the benefits, then you might choose not to continue this relationship or this friendship with that individual. Next theory that is talked about in this chapter is looking at the relationships dialectics theory. And a great way of thinking about that is through the dialectics and the tensions that you might feel in a relationship or a friendship. So let's hypothetically say that you have been in a serious relationship before. There is a great dialectic that this theory looks at. This is the idea of connection versus autonomy. So you want to be connected with that individual that you're in a relationship with, but you also want to be an independent person. You want your freedom. So it's you having to be able to navigate the discourses of the relationship and be able to articulate to your partner, hey, here are the boundaries that I want in terms of connection, but also still simultaneously having my own freedom and independence. So, this theory looks at different types of dialectics that you might be able to feel within a relationship and trying to figure out, hey, how does my communication and my discourses allow or not allow me to be able to succeed in these dialectics? Other things that you might want to take into consideration whenever you actually have a conflict is, what is this conflict about? So, the type of conflict. And the textbook goes through some various different types of conflicts that you might encounter in your lifetime, as well as the different types of stages of interpersonal conflict, of thinking about from the very beginning all the way to the settlement and resolution component of that conflict. So, some topics that might interest you in Chapter 7 are the elements that align with small group communication. I've already talked about the importance of a primary group. Remember, a primary group is that group that's going to stick together for a long period of time. And that's your really close friend and your family. So those small groups are going to stay together for an extended period of time. But then you also have task-oriented groups. And these are groups that you might be a part of, whether it's a sports team, an organization, or even at your job. So consider the different components that make up a task-oriented group. And why do those groups stay together? What gels them together? Next, we've already talked about the stages of small group development. As you're doing small group activity 2, consider how you're going through all those different stages. Because initially it starts with you having to reach out to those individuals and form that group. And then as you're playing the game, you're having to storm together and figure out, hey, if it's a new game, what exactly are we doing? But how long are we going to keep doing this? And then eventually you'll norm together, perform, and then adjourn. Next, I want you to think about your own leadership style. So maybe you're more of an authoritarian leader and you are trying to control the situation. Or maybe you're democratic and you're asking other people for their opinion. You really encourage collaboration and voting. Or maybe you're a little laissez-faire, kick back and relaxed. And you just kind of anticipate that people are going to do the roles that they're assigned. So consider your own leadership style and how you approach different activities in your life. Finally, I want you to think about the different types of power there are in small groups. Why do we join small groups? What do we get out of it? Is there a reward at the end of it? So, lots of different things to consider in terms of power and why people are a part of small groups and take action in the way that they do. So, I hope you enjoy Unit 8. Have some fun engaging in those conflicts and definitely have fun putting together that game night. So, I'll see you in Unit 9.